Have you ever noticed this strange pattern? The people who leave you the most drained are often the same people you tried hardest to be patient with. You gave them the benefit of the doubt. You explained yourself carefully. You tried to be understanding. And somehow, every interaction still left you feeling smaller, heavier, more confused than before. These people rarely attack you openly. They don't scream or insult you directly. They operate quietly, subtly, with precision. They twist facts just enough to make you doubt yourself. They disappear at key moments. They respond late, or not at all. They smile when things go wrong for you. They plant uncertainty in your mind and then step back, watching what it does to you. And when you finally react, when you finally push back or show frustration, they look at you like you're the problem, calm, innocent, almost amused. It might be a coworker who always finds a way to undermine you while pretending to be helpful. A family member who thrives on tension but calls it concern. Someone you once loved who knows exactly how to press your emotional buttons and then claim they did nothing wrong. Different roles, same result. You walk away exhausted, replaying the conversation in your head, wondering what you could have said differently, because that's what you were taught to do. Be kind, be patient, be the bigger person. Keep the peace. Smooth things over. Absorb discomfort quietly. Don't make a scene. Don't be difficult. But Machiavelli would never advise you to live like that. He would ask you something much colder and much more dangerous to ignore. Are you actually being kind, or are you allowing someone to slowly dismantle you? In a world where manipulation is rewarded, kindness without strategy is not virtue. It's exposure. And people who operate in bad faith sense that instantly. They don't need to overpower you. They only need access to your emotions. Here's the brutal truth most people don't want to hear. You cannot fix someone who benefits from your confusion. You cannot heal someone who feeds on your reactions. And you cannot reason with someone who doesn't want resolution. The only real move is to remove their access to you. And that begins with unlearning what you were taught about being good. Toxic people are not primarily interested in hurting you. They're interested in observing you, studying you, learning how you respond under pressure. They don't feed on logic. They feed on emotional output, on predictability, on knowing that you will reply, that you will explain, that you will try to be understood. They know you hate being misinterpreted. They know you feel compelled to clarify. That's the trap. They don't want clarity. They want reaction. Every time you say, "That's not what I meant," every time you write a long message trying to smooth things over, every time you forgive too quickly, hoping this time they'll finally get it, you're stepping exactly where they want you to step. They act wounded, you soften. They blame, you apologize. They go silent, you grow anxious. They explode, you calm them down. Every emotional movement you make is information, and every piece of information becomes leverage. If you don't control your emotions, someone else will learn how to control you through them. You might tell yourself, "I just want peace. I don't want conflict. I don't want to make things worse." But here's the reality. You're not creating peace. You're postponing a war, one that's happening inside you. While you hope they'll change, they're refining how to hurt you more efficiently, more quietly, more plausibly. You believe you're doing the right thing, but what you're really doing is what's expected of you, and what's expected is always the easiest thing to manipulate. Machiavelli understood this deeply. Power does not belong to the most moral person in the room. It belongs to the person who understands human behavior and knows when to withdraw from it. Toxic people understand this instinctively. They don't need your loyalty. They only need your hesitation, your pause, your doubt. Their greatest victory is convincing you that your reaction is required, that you owe them an explanation, that you must respond, that it's your responsibility to keep everything calm. It isn't. You don't have to answer every message. You don't have to justify every boundary. You don't have to stay in conversations that drain you. You can remain still. You can step back. You can close the door without warning, without drama, without guilt. What toxic people fear most isn't your anger. Anger still engages them. Anger still feeds the dynamic. What they fear is your absence of reaction. Silence disrupts their entire strategy. No noise, no effort, no explanation. Just distance. Silence is not weakness. It's repositioning. It signals that you've seen the pattern and you're no longer moving according to it. Reaction is vulnerability. Intention is power. And silence, when used deliberately, is control. Boundaries are not emotional gestures. They are not moral speeches. They are not pleas for respect. They are strategic lines. Toxic people don't cross your boundaries because they don't understand them. They cross them because they know you're unlikely to enforce them. They test, they push, they wait. And every time you hesitate, soften, or over-explain, you confirm what they already suspected, that they can go further. You were taught that saying no is rude, that setting limits is selfish, that walking away is cruel. That belief system didn't make you kind. It made you accessible. You were trained to be agreeable, to absorb discomfort, to adapt endlessly, to carry emotional weight that was never yours. But here's the reality. Most people learn too late. Good people get used. Strategic people get respected. Reclaiming control starts with clarity, brutal clarity. Ask yourself honestly, who drains me? Who ignores my time and energy? Who only respects me when it's convenient for them? Once you have those answers, stop asking for permission to protect yourself. Boundaries don't need negotiation. They don't need emotional framing. They need enforcement. Let your no be clean. Let your distance be quiet. Let your actions replace your explanations. I'm not available for that anymore. I don't respond to messages after hours. I won't engage with this today. Then stop. No long speeches. No apologetic tone. No overcompensating kindness. Because the moment you remove explanation, you remove leverage. Toxic people want loopholes. They want debate. They want you uncertain and soft-spoken. Take that away, and their power collapses. No is not the beginning of a conversation. It is the end of one. If someone reacts aggressively to your boundary, that reaction is confirmation it was necessary. They will say you've changed. They will call you cold, distant, selfish, good. That means it's working. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries will never applaud your growth, and they don't need to. Your job is no longer to keep everyone comfortable. Your job is to protect your peace. And peace, like any territory, must be guarded. This is where the shift begins. Protecting your peace is not passive. It's not accidental. It's an active decision to stop bleeding energy into places that never gave you anything back. And once you make that decision, something uncomfortable happens. The people who are used to crossing your lines start to resist. Not because you become unreasonable, but because the rules have changed. This is the part most people aren't prepared for. When you begin enforcing boundaries without emotion, without explanation, without guilt, toxic people don't suddenly become respectful. They escalate. They test harder. They push deeper. They search for cracks. Why? Because control doesn't disappear quietly. It fights to survive. They will accuse you of being different, of being distant, of being selfish. They will imply you've lost your warmth, that you're cold now, that you've changed. They're right. You have. The version of you that absorbed disrespect no longer exists, and that's what they're reacting to. Understand this clearly. When someone gets angry at your boundary, they are not reacting to the boundary itself. They are reacting to the loss of access. They are reacting to the fact that they can no longer move you the way they used to. That's not cruelty, that's consequence. Most toxic dynamics survive on one thing: your emotional availability, your willingness to explain, your desire to be understood, your habit of smoothing things over even when you were the one being harmed. The moment you stop doing that, the entire structure collapses. This is why silence is so powerful. Silence starves manipulation. It removes feedback. It cuts the supply line. Toxic people don't need to yell. They don't need to insult you directly. They work through subtle pressure, through tone, through timing, through implication, through the quiet suggestion that you're somehow failing them. A backhanded compliment, a guilt-laced comment, a sudden withdrawal of affection, a passive-aggressive remark disguised as concern. None of it is random. It's calculated. They are playing a long game, and the battlefield is your nervous system. You start questioning yourself, replaying conversations, wondering if you overreacted, apologizing when you did nothing wrong, shrinking your needs to keep the environment calm. That's not peace. That's conditioning, and the conditioning only works if you keep responding the same way. Every defensive explanation feeds the loop. Every emotional reaction reinforces the pattern. Every attempt to clear things up gives them more material. They don't want resolution. They want repetition. An anxious mind is easier to control. A calm one is not. This is where most people fail. They mistake disengagement for avoidance. They think silence means weakness. They believe walking away is losing. It isn't. Silence, when intentional, is discipline. It says, I see what you're doing and I refuse to participate. You don't argue with manipulation. You neutralize it. That begins with how you respond, or don't. When someone baits you, go neutral. Not sarcastic, not cold, neutral. That's your opinion. I see. Noted. Short, flat, undramatic. There's nothing to escalate, nothing to grab onto. Toxic people thrive on intensity. Remove intensity and the game breaks. The second tactic is delay. Manipulators want immediacy. They want your reaction now, while emotion is high and clarity is low. Don't give it to them. When provoked by text or message, don't reply instantly. Let time pass. Let the urgency dissolve. Let the emotional charge burn out on its own. Time is leverage. Use it. The third tactic is exit. If a conversation turns manipulative, if the air feels heavy, if you sense the familiar pull into confusion or guilt, leave. No warning, no performance, no explanation. I'm not available for this conversation. Then disengage. That single sentence carries more power than an hour of explaining, because now they are left alone with their tactics, with no emotional supply, with nothing to feed on. And when this happens consistently, something predictable occurs. They escalate, not because they care, but because they're losing grip. They'll try guilt, they'll try pity, they'll try anger, they'll try tears. This is not vulnerability, it's desperation. They are testing to see if any old lever still works. Your only task at this stage is to hold your position. Do not argue. Do not justify. Do not soften. Psychological stillness is unbearable to someone who relies on chaos. Stay unreadable. Stay untouchable. Because once they realize your patterns have changed, they are forced to confront something they've avoided for a long time. They no longer control you. When you become emotionally unavailable to manipulation, you become unbreakable. Your entire life, you were taught to fix things, to talk it out, to be the bigger person, to smooth over conflict, to rescue relationships at your own expense. No one warned you that in the hands of the wrong person, empathy becomes ammunition. They expect your compassion. They expect your patience. They expect you to come back and explain. That expectation is the trap. So you invert the dynamic. You stop engaging. You stop explaining. You stop saving. This is not confrontation. It's withdrawal. Toxic people thrive on connection, but not healthy connection. Control-based connection. They don't want closeness. They want access. The inversion move is stepping out of their orbit quietly and completely. You become present but unreachable, calm but unavailable, still but impenetrable. They notice immediately. The moment you stop reacting, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability is terrifying to someone who controls through routine emotional responses. When they provoke and you respond with, "That doesn't work for me," or "nothing at all," they spiral. Not because they miss you, but because the script they rehearsed for years no longer works. They may accuse you of being heartless, cold, detached. Let them. That noise is withdrawal. They are detoxing from control. You do not owe anyone your emotional bandwidth. You do not owe explanations for your silence. You do not need permission to protect your mind. Disengagement is not punishment. It is self-defense. You are not trying to hurt them. You are trying to survive. Toxic people do not change when you help them. They change when they lose access to what they exploit. And when you become calm, unavailable, and disciplined, they are forced into accountability or irrelevance. They used to set the rhythm. They spoke, you reacted. They pulled away, you chased. They criticized, you explained. Flip it. Now you choose when to engage. Now you observe instead of chase. Now you walk away without spectacle. When someone becomes more exhausting than valuable, you don't fight. You exit. No drama, no speeches, no emotional collapse, just space, silence, distance. This is how power moves quietly. And this is where most people misunderstand silence. Silence is not avoidance. It's not fear. And it's not surrender. Silence is control. Toxic people crave engagement. Not understanding, not resolution. Engagement. They want your attention, your defense, your explanations, because every word gives them more information. Every reaction exposes your pressure points. Silence takes that away. The most dangerous person in any room is the one who no longer needs to speak to be understood. You used to explain. Now you pause. You used to argue. Now you observe. You used to clarify. Now you say nothing. That shift changes everything. They can't provoke what doesn't move. They can't manipulate what doesn't respond. They can't control what refuses feedback. You are no longer part of their script. This is the foundation. Once you're no longer part of their script, something strange happens. The mask slips. The manipulation becomes obvious, because the moment you stop reacting, they can't hide behind subtlety anymore. They have to escalate, sharpen the pressure, amplify the tactics, just to see if you'll return to the old version of you. And that's when you finally see it clearly. Toxic people aren't complicated. They're patterned. They operate like chess players. Calculated, patient, quiet. They don't fight openly. They don't need to. They weaponize the subtle. The backhanded compliment. Wow, you finally did something right. The guilt trip. Guess I'll just suffer alone since you're too busy. The silent treatment. Days of quiet just to make you question your worth. The blame shift. I wouldn't have done that if you hadn't provoked me. The triangulation. Pulling others into the conflict while pretending to stay neutral. This isn't miscommunication. It's psychological warfare, and the battlefield is your nervous system. That's why it works. Because it doesn't feel like an attack. It feels like you're losing your mind. You start second-guessing yourself. You overthink every sentence. You replay moments for hours. You apologize just to calm the tension, even when you weren't wrong. You feel like the crazy one. That's the program, and they're skilled at running it. But here's the key. The program only works if you keep reacting the same way. Every time you get defensive, you feed it. Every time you try to justify your feelings, you feed it. Every time you beg to be understood, you feed it. They don't want peace. They want you on edge. Because an anxious person is easier to guide, easier to guilt, easier to control. So if you want to break the loop, you don't fight harder, you don't explain better, you don't become more understanding. You change your pattern. That's it. That's the whole game. The moment your pattern changes, their leverage dies. So, let's make it practical. What does Machiavellian treatment look like in real life without turning you into a cruel person? It looks like controlled disengagement. Step 1. Neutralize the bait. When they throw something provocative at you, an accusation, a jab, a loaded question, your job is not to defend your character. Your job is to remove fuel. That's your opinion. I hear you. Okay. Short, clean, emotionless. Not cold as in bitter, cold as in controlled. Toxic people hate neutral responses because neutral responses give them nothing to grip. No emotional spike, no frantic explanation, no visible injury. They can't win if you don't play the game. Step 2. Delay the reaction. Most manipulation depends on speed. They want to catch you in the moment, when you're irritated, tired, triggered, or emotionally raw. They want immediacy, because immediacy creates mistakes. So stop being immediate. If they message you with drama, you don't respond right away. You let hours pass. You let the urgency die. You let yourself regain clarity, because clarity is lethal to manipulation. Time says, I respond on my terms, not yours. Step 3. Exit the conversation. When the conversation turns toxic, you do not stay and try to fix it. You don't negotiate. You don't plead for understanding. You don't try to smooth it over. You leave. I'm not available for this. I'm not continuing this conversation. This doesn't work for me. Then you disengage. Not loudly, not angrily, quietly. Because the most powerful exit is the one that doesn't ask for permission. Now here's the warning. When you do this, they will escalate. They'll push harder. They'll provoke deeper. They'll try new tactics. They'll act confused. They'll call you cold. They'll accuse you of being selfish. They'll pretend they're the victim. This is the final stage of control loss. Desperation. And your only job is to stay consistent. Consistency is what breaks them. One neutral response doesn't change the dynamic. A month of neutral responses does. One boundary doesn't change the dynamic. Enforcing the boundary every time does. Because toxic people do not respond to explanations. They respond to consequences. They don't respect your words. They respect your enforcement. This is why "no" is a complete sentence is not just a quote. It's a weapon. No doesn't require a speech. No doesn't require softening. No doesn't require justification. No is the end of the conversation. And when they push for a reason, remember, they're not asking because they want to understand. They're asking because they want an opening. They want you to explain so they can twist it. They want you to justify so they can debate it. They want you to soften so they can re-enter. Take away the explanation, and you take away the opening. Now let's talk about the phrases that reset your power instantly. These aren't affirmations. These are battle commands, short sentences that collapse years of emotional conditioning. Command 1. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Read that again, slowly. You are not required to destroy your own peace to maintain someone else's comfort. Self-destruction is not kindness. It's submission. Command 2. No is a complete sentence. No soft landing. No nervous laugh. No sorry attached to it. Just no. If someone can't respect your no, they were never asking respectfully. Command 3. I am not available for that. Not I wish I could. Not I'm sorry. Not maybe later. Just I'm not available for that. You're not available for drama. You're not available for manipulation. You're not available for disrespect. Your energy is not a public service. Command 4. You've changed. Correct. The old you tolerated what the new you refuses. Let them say you're cold. Let them label you. Labels are the last weapon people use when they can't control you anymore. Command 5. I don't explain myself to people who are committed to misunderstanding me. This one cuts deep because it exposes the truth. You've been arguing with someone who isn't confused. They're strategic. They don't misunderstand you. They weaponize misunderstanding. So stop feeding it. Walk away. Command 6. Peace is not passive. It is protected. You don't stumble into peace. You build it. You guard it. You defend it. And yes, sometimes defending it means being seen as the villain by people who only loved you when you didn't love yourself. Command 7. Silence is strategy, not surrender. They think you're weak because you don't yell back. They think you're scared because you leave. They think they've won because you didn't reply. They're wrong. You're silent because you've seen the playbook, and you refuse to act in it anymore. Command 8. You can love someone and still leave. This is the one people struggle with. You can care about someone and still choose distance. You can wish them peace and still never speak to them again. Because love is not absorption. Love is not sacrifice. Love is not tolerating disrespect for the sake of history. You can release them without bitterness, without drama, without performance. These sentences are psychological armor. Memorize them. Because in toxic dynamics, a single clean sentence, delivered with certainty, can sever chains that took years to form. Now, here's where the story gets real. There comes a moment in every toxic relationship where your body says what your mouth won't. You lose sleep. You feel anxious before every interaction. You rehearse conversations that never go how you planned. You walk on eggshells. You shrink yourself. And somehow it's never enough. That anxiety isn't weakness. It's a signal. Your nervous system is telling you the truth your hope keeps denying. But instead of leaving, many people double down. They tell themselves, it's not that bad. They blame themselves. They think, if I explain it better this time, maybe they'll understand. If I'm more patient, maybe they'll change. If I love them hard enough, maybe they'll become who they promised to be. But they don't. And you get more depleted, more resentful, more ashamed for staying. And still, you feel afraid to leave. Why? Because toxic attachment isn't love. It's addiction. Toxic attachment feels like love, but it doesn't behave like love. It behaves like a chemical dependency. High highs, crushing lows. Brief moments of relief followed by long stretches of tension. Your body gets hooked on the cycle, not the person. You stay for those rare moments when things feel calm again, when they're kind, when they seem reflective, when you think, maybe this time it's different, and you endure oceans of chaos just to reach those moments. Over time, you start confusing tension with intimacy, drama with depth, control with care. The chaos becomes familiar, and familiar starts to feel safe, even when it's destroying you. That's the loop. And the hardest part of that loop isn't the pain. It's admitting you already knew. You saw the red flags early. You felt the emotional damage in your body. You even whispered to yourself late at night, "This isn't right." But you stayed. Not because you were weak, but because part of you believed a fantasy, that your loyalty would inspire change, that your patience would heal them, that your love would eventually bring out the person they pretended to be at the beginning. They won't, not because they can't change, but because they don't need to. As long as you stay, the performance is unnecessary. You stayed because it was familiar, because chaos felt safer than being alone, because walking away felt like failure, because leaving meant admitting the investment didn't pay off. But here's the truth most people never hear clearly enough. You are not failing when you walk away. You are not cruel when you enforce peace. You are not selfish when you save yourself first. What's truly cruel is making yourself sick trying to be someone else's antidote. That exhaustion, that anxiety, that emptiness. It's not weakness, it's clarity. Your system is screaming one message: this is not sustainable. And the solution isn't more conversations. It isn't better wording. It isn't one last explanation that finally makes them understand. You don't need the perfect sentence. You need permission. Permission to protect your energy. Permission to outgrow who you used to be. Permission to leave without anger, without drama, without justification. You do not owe anyone your continued suffering just because they once mattered to you. That moment, when you stop hoping for who they could be and finally accept who they are, is the emotional collapse. The death of the illusion. And yes, it hurts. But collapse is not the end. It's the beginning of reconstruction. Only after the illusion breaks can you build something stronger, clearer, boundaried, untouchable. Let them go. Let the fantasy die so your real self can live. Toxic people are not mysterious. They are predictable. They operate on patterns, triggers, and weaknesses. Yours, not theirs. The reason they keep winning isn't because they're smarter. It's because they play by power rules while you play by emotional ones. So it's time to rewrite your rule book. Not suggestions. Laws. Law 1. Anyone who gets angry when you set boundaries was benefiting from your lack of them. They're not upset because you became cruel. They're upset because the version of you they could control is gone. You evolved. They lost access. Good. Law 2. Loyalty without limits turns you into a servant, not a partner. You don't prove love through endurance. You don't prove worth through suffering. People who respect you don't test how much pain you'll tolerate. Only users do that. Law 3. You are not responsible for someone else's healing. You can care, you can support, but you cannot carry them. When someone refuses to take responsibility for their pain, that pain becomes a weapon. That's not healing. That's emotional debt collection. Law 4. If you have to argue for your value, you're already in the wrong environment. Respect is felt. It's not negotiated. The moment you start justifying your worth, you've already handed it away. Take it back. Law 5. Silence is not passive. It's calculated control. Silence isn't what happens when you have nothing to say. It's what happens when you realize words are useless. You don't argue with a fire, you smother it. Law 6. Guilt is their leash. Toxic people love guilt. It keeps you tethered. It makes you question every decision you make in your own best interest. Drop the leash. You are not a villain for choosing peace. Law 7. Closure is not a shared conversation. It's a self-delivered verdict. Stop chasing final words. You don't need agreement. You don't need apologies. Closure happens when you decide this ends here and mean it. Law 8. Time and access are privileges, not rights. Just because someone had access to you in the past does not entitle them to you in the future. Access must be earned, and it can be revoked. Law 9. Emotional discipline is power. It's not about being cold. It's about being strategic. The person who stays calm, who chooses when to engage, who doesn't dance when provoked, controls the room. Law 10. You are not the same person they manipulated before. You've seen the pattern. You've named the game. And now, when they try again, you don't flinch. You respond on your terms, without emotion, without apology, without openings. These laws are not cruel. They are necessary. Because when someone feeds on your chaos, boundaries become your only act of war. Enforce them without emotion, without exception. Now imagine this. Fast forward 10 years. You're still explaining, still hoping, still trapped in the same cycles, the same apologies, the same guilt, the same conversations that go nowhere. You've built your life around not upsetting them. You've shrunk yourself to keep a relationship alive that never gave you oxygen. You lost time, missed opportunities, silenced your instincts. And for what? A fantasy, a memory, a version of them that never truly existed. There is no trophy for loyalty to someone who was never loyal to your peace. That's one possible future. Now imagine the inversion. The moment you stopped playing small to keep someone else comfortable. The moment you stopped performing, stopped explaining yourself to people who were never listening. You walked away, not to punish them, but to reclaim yourself. And in doing so, you became someone else. This version of you doesn't flinch at disapproval. You no longer explain your boundaries. You enforce them. You don't chase love. You recognize alignment. You burn the bridge to the old you, the one who tolerated too much, apologized too often, and made excuses for behavior that never changed. And out of those ashes, you built something colder, sharper, cleaner, peace. Not the fragile kind that depends on someone else's mood. The kind that stands in silence even when provoked. This is what people feel when they say, "You've changed." They're right. You had to. Because survival without transformation isn't survival, it's stagnation. They will rewrite the story. They'll say you became distant, that you think you're better than everyone. Let them. Their narrative is not your responsibility. What survives is not what you endured. It's what you finally refuse to tolerate. And that's where the final shift happens. At some point, you stop asking what they want, and you start asking a different question, one that changes everything. What does my future deserve? That question doesn't come from anger. It comes from exhaustion, from clarity, from the quiet realization that you've been negotiating your peace with people who never intended to honor it. When the time comes, you don't owe anyone a final conversation. You don't owe closure. You don't owe a performance of pain. You don't owe a long message explaining why you're leaving. You leave because it's finished. Not to teach them a lesson, not to make them miss you, not to manipulate their emotions. You leave because the role has expired, the pattern has been exposed. The game has no more moves, and once that happens, staying is no longer loyalty. It's self-betrayal. This is where power becomes quiet. You don't cry in front of them. You don't announce your awakening. You don't send the long text. You disappear. Not dramatically, not angrily, completely. And yes, they will try to pull you back in. They'll bait you. They'll accuse you of being heartless. They'll act confused. They'll say you've changed. They're not wrong. But deep down, they already know why. They always did. They just hoped you'd never be strong enough to leave. But you are. Not because you became cold, but because you became clear. You don't have to hate them. You don't have to wish them harm. You don't have to relive the past to justify your decision. You simply refuse to be accessed again. No second chances. No reopening the wound. No explanations to people who used your kindness as leverage. You are not abandoning them. You are rescuing yourself. And here's the part most people never understand until it happens. The most powerful sentence in your arsenal is not, "I'm done." It's the silence that follows. That silence does more than any argument ever could. It ends the dynamic. It collapses the illusion. It forces the truth to stand on its own. Silence is not absence. It's presence without availability. You are still there, still grounded, still powerful, just unreachable. Let them talk. Let them spiral. Let them rewrite the story. None of it changes your position. Because silence, when chosen deliberately, is discipline. It's emotional sovereignty. It's the refusal to leak power into places that only drain you. And when you finally master that posture, the shift is permanent. Toxic people live off control. Silence removes it. They can't provoke you. They can't guilt you. They can't force reactions on cue, and that terrifies them more than any insult ever could. Silence is the revenge of the emotionally disciplined. Not revenge in the sense of harm, but in the sense of freedom. You are no longer available for chaos, no longer reactive, no longer explainable. You don't announce your growth. You embody it. And when you speak again, if you ever do, it won't be to plead or defend. It will be to declare, on your time, on your terms. Because silence is not the absence of sound. It's the presence of control. So remember this. You were never meant to shrink yourself to keep others comfortable. You were never meant to burn your energy to prove loyalty. You were never meant to stay where your nervous system was constantly under attack. Your legacy will not be what you endured. It will be the line you finally drew. Not the pain you absorbed, but the peace you protected. Not the people you pleased, but the self you preserved. Not the words you spoke, but the silence you mastered. And when people speak of you years from now, it won't matter whether they understood your decision. It will only matter that you made it, because power does not argue. Power does not beg. Power does not explain itself endlessly. Power exits the room and never returns, and that's how it ends.